Hello everyone, I am Tessellating Hexagons, and we've hit upon that time of year once again where I have to bemoan the fact that the supplier who gave me my flags, or rather from whom I bought my flags, it wasn't a brand deal or anything, doesn't seem to understand that this is too pale! The flag of Moldova has a slightly darker shade of blue than this, and if I could swap the shade of blue here with the unnecessarily dark shade of blue on my flag of Luxembourg, I would do so in a heartbeat. But, yeah, Moldova. Once again, sorry that my supplier couldn't give me a flag that actually looks like your flag, but this is as close as we can get without me using the flag of Andorra instead. That tangent sufficiently repeated once again for this year. Well, actually, repeating for this year is kind of a relevant point in an affectionate sort of way, because this year Moldova will be represented once again by Mr. Pavel Parfeni, better known by his stage name Pasha Parfeni, who last represented his country as a solo artist in 2012. He was also the pianist on stage with Aliona Moon in 2013, and this year he's bringing us a song called Soarele și Luna, which means the sun and the moon, sun and moon. Sun and Moon, the 7th generation Pokemon games, except that's not what he's singing about at all. And it's an experience. It's presented fully in Romanian, so we are 2 for 2 of the Romanian-speaking countries this year singing songs in Romanian. We love to see it. Music by Pasha Parfeni and Andrei Volpe, and lyrics by Iuliana Scutaru. So, quite a small team, and it's kind of a banger, so let's dig deeper. Okay, not to be reductive, but to summarise the song in 2 words, Moldovan Fulen. And I mean that as a compliment, I really do. After all, it's not like any given genre belongs exclusively to one song for all time, it's just easy to make the comparison in terms of sound. And I must say, after Pasha's song from 2012, and his national final entry from 2020, let's not forget that that happened, this was absolutely not the sort of sound I was expecting to hear from him, but honestly, I'm here for it. I do find myself wishing for a slightly more explosive drop than the one we actually get, and this is, at present, one of those songs that only really seems to have one sound to it this year, but these are comparatively minor gripes from me. On the whole, it's Moldova doing what Moldova does best. A bit of culture, a bit of crazy, and a name we recognise from about 10 years prior. No offense, I had to make that affectionate little jab, because, last year we just had Zdobshi Stub for the 3rd time. At this rate, it'll be Aliona Moon next year, and then the long-awaited return of Christina Scarlett. Well, I wouldn't complain. Anyway, serious focus times. What might you like about this song? Well, let's start with what might be my weakest point, but a valid point nonetheless. As I said, this song is just a straight-up banger. It's feel-good. It's, not to be terminally down with the cool kids or whatever, but Pasha is serving vibes, man! We all up in the club turning down to some juicy Moldovan beats, we eatin' good, etc. What I'm getting at is, with or without a full understanding of the lyrics or the story, this song is very easy to just enjoy. Just on the merit of how it sounds, you can bop along with it, and if you've been following me this season, you'll know how much I enjoy that kind of accessibility in music. If you understand it, great. If you don't, you can still boogie down now. I'm cringing as well at myself, don't worry. But let's say you do understand what's going on here beyond just the soundscape, because some people will. While I can't necessarily comment on what specific cultural influences are here, the song is clearly heavily drawing upon a rich cultural background and infusing traditional sounds and ideas and imagery with modern sensibilities to create a thoroughly unique package. This isn't some cheap pop drivel you could buy from a Scandinavian pop farm or anything like that. And I'm not specifically throwing shade, I could just as easily go after, a certain Mr. Kirkorov, and, it's not that, is what I'm saying. This is something that only an individual with a unique idea could provide us with, and it shows, and we love it for it. And so, what we end up with is a massively memorable performance of a memorable song that leaves a remarkable impression. Musically, you've got the heavy beat, the vocal harmonies, the flute hook, it's some sort of pipe anyway, And visually, you've got the drummers, you've got the antler ladies, and you've got the dance battle between Pasha and the flute guy, all set against a backdrop of simple-ish but effective imagery inspired by cultural depictions of the sun, the moon, and, at a key point in the song, a solar eclipse, so both at the same time. This is what Moldova does. They rock up and they make sure that they are noticed no matter what it is they're doing. Good to see they still understand the assignment after all these years. Still, as always, you are not obligated whatsoever to like any particular song, this one included. One thing that itched me about it, for instance, is a particular aspect of the arrangement. While the drop is good, it consistently felt like the song was building up to something much more explosive for its finale, but instead the song hits the ground running, builds up to its maximum energy by the first minute, and then kinda leaves itself nowhere further to build. If that sense of progress from the first minute was maintained more or less throughout, this could have had the same kind of impact as Shum in 2021, for example, but for me at least, it doesn't quite hit that high just yet. On a similar note, the lyrics. While they do tell a story that suits the sound and look and provenance of the song, and are suitably narrative-heavy in so doing, they do rely on repetition a bit too much for my liking, bearing in mind the aforementioned issue of, building and then stagnating. The refrain itself is highly repetitive on its own, so when the structure of the song is verse, refrain, new verse, refrain, repeat an idea from the second verse, refrain, it's gonna start sounding a little bit tiring, I suppose is the word. Sure, there is a place for repetition, bearing in mind the song's cultural heritage. Repetition, vocal harmonies, that sort of thing, that is something that is more or less endemic to traditional human cultures, so I can't complain that much, but if you're going to say this is a song that takes cultural heritage and injects modern sensibilities, then the effect of that repetition is something you're going to need to keep in mind when played against those modern sensibilities. All of this is to say, the song overall feels a bit like a 2-minute song stretched out to last 3, and I feel like it's not the first time I've said that about Moldova. Of course, there are far worse sounds than this that could receive that treatment, so rather that happen here than to a song that's difficult to enjoy. It feels a little bit like a disservice to the idea and to the performers that we don't get just a little bit more spice and variety and build-up in order to fully utilise the 3-minute running time. Take it as a compliment. I want more of this song than what we get, so I'm not insulting the song, I just want more! Now then, let's get numerical like we always do at about this point in the video. This might come as a surprise to some people, but I'm going to give this a personal score of 9 out of 10. Yeah, I know, if you know me, you might have expected a 10 here, and I want to be able to go that high, but I can't quite bring myself to commit quite that hard. The reason for that is, while I like the song's sound and image and overall presence, I nevertheless find myself stuck on the feeling of it being not quite complete. That is to say, I feel like it loses its sense of direction around the middle 8, and then the back half of the song is just iterations of the same repetition of what is already a naturally repetitive refrain. It's still a fun time, I just find myself itching for a little bit more that isn't more of the same again. But for the time I've been with Eurovision, this sort of thing has kind of defined Moldova for me, Pasha's 2012 entry was a big part of how I formed my first opinions of what they do at Eurovision. This, and Nelly Ciobanu, and Stop She Stop the first 2 times, it's quintessentially Moldova, it's just, I want more. But hey, maybe my inner juror can make this make more sense. Lyrical quality, I'm gonna say 1, and I'm gonna feel bad about it. Make no mistake, what we have is definitely good, solid, and rich in imagery. It's just that the lyrics sort of check out about halfway through the song, after which it's nothing but repetition and trying to re-find, wandering around the idea of the song, trying to find the direction that it's lost. While that could be argued as being a part of the song's cultural aspect, like I said before, one could just as easily argue that it's cause for hesitation when thinking like a juror. Musical quality, for similar reasons, another 1 out of 2, because again, it's brilliant, it's solid, it's driving, it's engaging, and it's generally effective, but I come away from it wanting it to have gone harder. Once you've heard the first minute or so and how it ramps up from 0 to 100, that's it. It doesn't build any further from there, which can lead to oral fatigue on the part of the audience, and that's a shame because, to reiterate, great ideas here. Delivery quality though, 2 out of 2. I mean, come on, it's Pasha Parfeni. We know he's a brilliant performer. He goes hard, this was never in doubt. Credit where it's due though, his entire team at the national final deserves fair recognition. There isn't a single person on that stage who isn't giving it 110% in all ways, and it shows in the performance. Just generally, well, I'd expect no less from Pasha. Staging potential, again, gotta be 2 out of 2. This song just naturally carries with it a powerful sense of aesthetic that will definitely translate well onto the Eurovision stage, both in the LED background and in the costumes and such on the stage proper. We already have that strong imagery of the 2 drummers, the 2 backing vocalists, and the dance battle between Pasha and the pipe player, and the costumes involved throughout. And while I'm not entirely sure what the dance battle is supposed to signify, it's still effective and memorable imagery regardless. It'll stay with the audience, and that's good. And appeal, again, 2 out of 2. What's not to like here? At worst, you might find the driving beat to be a little bit too noisy, and you might want more out of the arrangement like I do, but even if you struggle to buy into anything about the performance in particular, it's still a solid party time bop that's bound to get the audience going on the night. In other words, you might like it, you might not, but it is very hard to hate. Altogether, that's a technical score of 8 out of 10, and when added to my personal rating, that's 17 out of 20. At this stage in history, I would expect no less from Moldova. Shine on, you crazy little diamond, you. Now, though, is Teleradio Moldova going in the right direction when it comes to Eurovision? I'm inclined to be generous and say yes. By all accounts, I should just call this a blue arrow and move on with my life, but it does seem that, while not much has changed within the national final format itself, this year seems to have been a bit less of a shambolic affair, relatively speaking. For one, it seems like the results this year were far more transparent, and I don't mean to imply that there was anything shady going on, it's just the exact voting numbers were very easily accessible this year. And at the risk of sounding like a bleeding heart, it was also much less of a one-horse race this time around. Even if the 3 frontrunners were all familiar faces who had done the contest before, it was just nice to know that it was still a competition with an uncertain outcome. I'd say that speaks quite highly to the quality of the competing entries, and that's something to be proud of. So, are we going to see this again in the final this year? Well, it's Moldova, being peak Moldova, so just on instinct I would say yes. This sort of thing usually does numbers with the televote anyway. I mean, just look at the televote score that Zdobszy Stub got last year. And in a semi-final without a juror in sight, that is only going to give them that much more of a boost. Moldova competes in semi-final 1, so what it loses in potential support from Romania and the UK, it gains by only needing to outclass 5 other songs in order to qualify. And as far as I know, there isn't anything else in the show, or indeed the entire competition, with quite this sort of sound. Bearing in mind how receptive Eurovision has been to this sort of idea lately, see for reference Go A, Kalush Orchestra, Moldova last year, I could see this going quite a ways. Sure, it didn't work out for France last year, so nothing is carved in stone, but Moldova knows how to work a crowd, so I would say they've got nothing to worry about, but I recognise those are just my thoughts, so what are yours? Listen to the song for yourself, think your own thoughts, and if you feel inclined to share, feel free to do so. To Pasha, I wish you the very best of luck, and to your whole team as well. Your whole team can be proud of what you're bringing here, so, yeah. I look forward to seeing what you bring in May, and just how far you can make it go. I think you're going to surprise everyone.